Well guys, with Season 1 just moments away, it's time to take a break from the news and stir up some angry comments, because today, we're running through my rankings of every base map in Battlefield 6. Now, it's no secret that Battlefield has struggled with map design over the past few years, and so far, Battlefield 6 still isn't perfect. While the environments certainly look and feel more immersive, I think a lot of player feedback since 2042 has been misinterpreted, often leading to messy, cluttered, and frustrating experiences. Especially during certain modes on specific maps. I'm looking at you, Breakthrough on Sobek City. But overall, Battlefield 6 is still a huge step up from 2042. It avoids those vast, empty spaces like Hourglass, but it introduces a new set of problems while still repeating some of the same old mistakes. For context, I've spent most of my time in Conquest, Escalation, and Breakthrough, along with several hours grinding in TDM and Rush. The smaller modes don't showcase the full lineup quite as well as the large-scale battles, so I'll be referencing those core experiences more often throughout the video. And as a reference point throughout the franchise, I've held maps like Strike at Karkand, Shanghai, Arctis, and Battlefield 3's Metro in high regard, with Amiens probably being my all-time favorite, though you could argue it doesn't deliver the full Battlefield experience quite like the others. But before we dive in, if you enjoy in-depth reviews, breakdowns, and discussions on all things Battlefield, make sure to drop a like, hit subscribe, and share your own map rankings down below. Alright, kicking things off with no surprises, Sobek City is shaping up to be an all-time terrible map, easily on the same level as Hourglass or Stadium from Battlefield 2042. It somehow commits every sin a Battlefield map can make, with these issues being most visible in Breakthrough, but still unavoidable in Conquest. First off, the map is probably 30% smaller than it should be, which allows power positions like the towers to dominate with massive sightlines across nearly the entire map. A map that's otherwise pretty void of structure with only occasional cover scattered throughout. The result is a clash between areas that are too powerful, structures that are too dense, and others that are completely vacant. In many ways, it reminds me of a worse version of St. Quentin Scar, as if someone decided to add sniper towers overlooking the trenches. And speaking of the towers, the central point of interest on this map is a complete mess. If you've ever attacked on Breakthrough here, you know exactly what I mean. It's a jarring shift from open fields to some of the worst interior spaces the franchise has ever seen, complete with head-glitched windows, multiple levels of elevation, and endless dark corners to rat in. Ultimately, the map forces players to hug cover, play passively, and prey on anyone moving between objectives. It's an ugly, empty no-man's land controlled by nearly unbreakable power positions, and in my opinion, an all-time terrible map. Moving up slightly, we've got Liberation Peak, a map that commits many of the same sins as Sobek, but shows a few glimmers of hope for this style of design. While nowhere near as good as St. Quentin Scar, it does borrow some of the same ideas to break up what could otherwise be an unplayable mess. Snipers are still a major issue on the higher side of the map, and traveling between objectives often feels like a death sentence. But its use of elevation helps break up lines of sight and separates key areas like the village into their own little pockets of combat. That structure gives players some flexibility in how and where they engage. It's still fairly one-note overall, but definitely a step in the right direction. It just needs more defined lanes or trenches to tie everything together. Maroc Valley is basically what Sobek could be if it adopted some of those same elevation tricks from Liberation Peak. The map limits dominant power positions with fewer central buildings and does a better job of breaking up sightlines through its terrain. The more lush environment also gives players a little extra visual cover, and it's genuinely beautiful during vehicle battles, with those dramatic shots of the crane collapsing as jets scream overhead. Conquest plays fairly well here, but Breakthrough can be brutal, especially in the first sector. It gives off serious Passchendaele vibes, just with more punishing gunplay and less structure to guide the chaos. It's so close to being a classic like Golden Railway, but falls short on both balance and replayability. Ultimately, Maroc Valley lands in that forgettable middle tier. Empire State is a tricky one. On the surface, it feels like a map I should adore as an infantry-focused player. But in practice, it's plagued by visibility issues and way too many places to hide. That said, the map structure is pretty solid. The lanes and variety are strong, and it brings a fresh environment to the series with its depiction of Brooklyn. You've got outdoor boulevards, interior spaces, rooftops, and choke points that offer real player agency. The problem is that it's just too busy. Between cluttered streets, dark interiors, and layered rooftops, the gameplay ends up rewarding players who stay still rather than those who move. If the devs came back to this one, blocked off some apartments, and cleaned up the clutter, it could be a great infantry map. But in its current state though, I rarely look forward to it in the rotation, but I also don't dread it either. It's right in the middle of the pack. Right off the bat, Saints Quarter isn't really a full Battlefield map, and it's kind of tough to rank alongside the rest. While prior games like Battlefield 3 did add close quarters maps specifically for smaller modes, Saints Quarter feels like an odd inclusion here, an exception to the all-out war philosophy the rest of the game follows. That said, as a small modes map, it's fantastic. You can tell it was purpose-built for TDM and domination, unlike the chopped-up sections of other maps. It's bright, beautiful, and it reminds me a lot of Battlefield 5's Mercury. It focuses the gameplay well with clear graphics and clean lane structure, and honestly, if you're coming from 6v6 Call of Duty, you'll probably feel right at home. Still, it's very one-note. Most players probably haven't even played it yet, and even within its own modes, it doesn't have that much depth. Beautifully crafted, but ultimately limited. Now, Iberian Offensive really surprised me, sort of the same way Devastation did back in Battlefield 5. At first glance, it looks like a dusty, cluttered mess, but in practice, it plays with a surprising amount of nuance and flow. While the destruction can get out of hand, especially around central objectives, the map has great lanes and player choice, making good use of ladders, deployable cover, and spawn beacons. It's like a modern twist on Amiens, with linear structure, vehicles, and manageable choke points. It even works well in smaller modes because of its solid multiple smaller lanes. Its biggest weakness though is visibility. The gray, dusty tone feels uninspired, and once the destruction ramps up, it can get hard to see anything, but despite that, it's a surprisingly solid and enjoyable map. Just above Iberian, we've got Manhattan Bridge. This one might not be the most refined in terms of layout, but it always puts a smile on my face with how varied it is. Across its massive elevation changes, tight corridors, and chaotic battles, it always delivers that sandbox feeling Battlefield is known for. You've got air combat overhead, vehicles below, and infantry fighting for control in between and all over the buildings of New York. It's dense, structured, and consistently fun across nearly every mode. Not a legendary map just yet, but absolutely one of the most enjoyable ones to play. In second place, we've got to pay respect to the classic Operation Firestorm. This map has been holding up for well over a decade, and it's still one of the best examples of Battlefield map design ever made. Firestorm captures that golden rule of Battlefield, freedom of choice. Infantry, vehicles, and aircraft all have space to shine, and every class has opportunity to counter the other. It's the definition of freedom and balance, giving players room to pick their playstyle without forcing them into one role. Of course, the map wasn't built with modern modes like Breakthrough in mind, and it does struggle there. But as a conquest map, it's near perfect. The looks, the variety, and the healthy dose of nostalgia. Finally, in first place, I have the Siege of Cairo. You could easily make an argument for Firestorm or Manhattan Bridge, but Cairo has been my personal favorite. With its well-defined lanes and robust structure, it nails that push and pull dynamic that makes Battlefield great on linear maps. Some players might prefer rounder layouts like Goldman Railway that give vehicles more freedom, but I've always gravitated towards linear maps, ones that emphasize front lines and clear objectives. Maps like Amiens, Operation Locker, and Devastation always end up near the top of my list for that reason, and Cairo fits right in. Yes, it still suffers from Battlefield 6's design flaws, dark corners, clutter, and punishing visibility, but it manages those issues far better than most maps across a wider range of game modes. Add in the strong military aesthetic, armored vehicle lanes, and diverse infantry routes, and it's a great experience across every mode. The only thing holding it back is Battlefield 6's broader design philosophy. Cairo is fundamentally great, it's just trapped inside of a game that's still learning how to be balanced. At the end of the day, Battlefield 6 doesn't have any truly iconic maps, at least not yet. Like Battlefield 5 at launch, there's still a ton of room for improvement, and a lot will depend on how DICE continues to refine the gameplay. So with that said, I'm hyped for what's next, specifically the new map Eastwood, but I want to hear your rankings down below. And as always, stay tuned and subscribe for everything Battlefield, and as always, thank you guys for watching.